Hi, thanks for tuning in. I'm Jill Underwood, the Mortgage Queen. Today I want to just dive right in. I want to talk to you about getting a mortgage in 2021. After the pandemic, still a little bit in the pandemic, but there's so many things that have changed in our world today with getting a mortgage. And I want to share some of those things with you so that if you want to buy a home this year or if you want to refinance your home this year, you know what to expect and you can be prepared for it, right? So let's dive right in. First of all, in 2020, COVID had a lot of effects on people's income. There were millions of people who got furloughed from their job and were not working for 3 or 4 months. And during those months, perhaps they were collecting unemployment. That affects your income in a big way. You probably just got your 2020 W-2 and your income was lower in 2020 than it was in 2019. So as a mortgage lender, we're going to look at that and be, their income is declining. Why should they buy a new home? So there's some new rules that we have for 2021 to make sure that your income has stabilized again. Because that's only fair, right? That we want you to have stable, consistent monthly income so that you can make that mortgage payment every month. So there's some extra things that we have to do. If you had a disruption of income in 2020 for COVID, what we're going to do right now is we're going to make you jump through some extra hoops. We're going to get some extra paycheck stubs to make sure that your income has stabilized. We're going to get a letter from your employer. The employer needs to tell us when you were off for COVID so that we can see the exact dates. When you were off, how many months that was, and if you collected unemployment during that, that's fine. Some people made more on unemployment than they did in their regular income. But unemployment is short-term income. It's not long-term income, so we don't get to count that at all. I know that's a misconception that a lot of people have. Oh, but I got unemployment. That's great. You could still pay your bills. That's great. But it's not long-term income that we get to count right now, right? Now, if you're an hourly wage employee, I have to make sure that you're working the same number of hours now as you were pre-COVID. We really like to see the 40 hours a week, that you work 40 hours a week, week in and week out. That is stable hourly wages. If your hourly wages, if your number of hours per week are not at 40, if they vary, if you're 38 one week, 39 the next, 38 and a half, 42, 41, if it varies like that, then we're going to have to do some extra due diligence to make sure, again, that your hours per week are stable as well as your hourly wage. Does that make sense? So there's some extra due diligence, there's some extra verification levels that we're going to go to make sure that you are back on track with your stable monthly income. Okay? Now, if you're self-employed, whoa, get ready for some extra documentation. Self-employed people, there are a lot of small business owners in 2020 that got hit really, really hard with COVID, with being shut down. Let's take, for example, I just had this happen. Let's take, for example, if you work in a hair salon or a nail salon. Y'all were completely shut down for a long time, and that was a big disruption in your income. And as a self-employed person, we generally average your income for 2 years, maybe a little less, maybe a little longer, but 2 years is pretty much the benchmark. And your lower 2020 income could have a huge impact on my average of your income. And I need to be able to see that you're on track for in 2021 for where you were in 2019. Does that make sense? We'll maybe show that 2020 wasn't as good, but are you back on track for where you were prior to COVID? It's things like that that we're going to really analyze the income to make sure, again, that you're stable. But you want your monthly income to be stable, right? You don't want to have a lot of fluctuations or declining income when you're trying to purchase a home, right? So it makes sense, don't you think? Another issue that we run into a lot now is working remotely. Doesn't everybody work remotely these days? I know I'm the only person in my office. If you work remotely, and what I'm finding right now is that a lot of people are staying remote. It works for the company, it works for the family, it works for the employee. A lot of y'all are taking this opportunity to relocate to another part of the country. So it might look like your employer is in Louisiana and you're moving to Kansas. Well, we have to make that make sense, right? So again, extra due diligence. We're going to get a letter from your employer stating that it's okay for you to work remotely. We're going to have you write a letter stating what's going on and why you're relocating your family to a different part of the country, even though your base income is somewhere else. I mean, a lot of it makes sense. We get it. There's a lot of people in, the western states that are moving to places more affordable and still working remotely. That can also go along with if you're self-employed and you're relocating to another area, because a lot of us now have jobs that we don't need to be face-to-face. So just some extra due diligence on those things. Back to the self-employed, I forgot to mention this. When you're self-employed, we now make you get extra documentation to provide to us what your last 3 months of income looks like. So you're going to have to get us some profit and loss statements and some bank statements, your business bank statements, because that business bank statement will show me that you really do still have the revenue coming in that you once had and that you're back on track. So the moral of my story today is this. If you want to buy a home in 2021, I need for you to really stop and look at your numbers. I will help you look at those numbers, and we want to make sure that you're good to go, that your income is back on track, that we can document that it's back on track, so that we can make it as easy as possible for you to buy a house this year in 2021. Does that make sense? I hope so. Let me know if it doesn't, or if you have any questions at all. I'm Jill Underwood, the Mortgage Queen. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.
I'm Jill